For 4 long years, the name Jed Hall echoed through Idaho like a question no one could answer. A 16-year-old boy, a sudden disappearance, and a set of clues that led nowhere. His family held on to hope, investigators kept looking, and rumors grew louder with every passing season. But the truth, heavy, silent, and undiscovered, was sitting just a few yards from the riverbank the entire time. The Snake River is known for its beauty, but beneath its surface, it hides a darkness few people ever see. Strong currents, zero visibility, a shifting floor of silt that can bury an entire vehicle in weeks. Search teams avoided it unless they had no other choice. Everyone knew that if something went under here, it wasn't coming back up easily. That's why the moment the sonar image appeared, everything stopped. A sharp outline, clean edges, a shape too symmetrical to be natural. A vehicle. Divers dropped into the murky water, swallowed instantly by blackness. They couldn't rely on sight, only touch. The river was cold, forcing them to move slowly as they traced the metal. First, the rear bumper, then a shattered taillight, and finally, a license plate buried beneath layers of silt. It matched the one belonging to a boy who vanished in 2018. The divers signaled to the surface. A recovery team moved in. When the straps tightened around the sunken SUV and it finally broke the surface, time seemed to freeze. Mud poured out of the windows like the river was letting go of secrets it had guarded for years. Inside that SUV were the remains that ended the mystery. The truth wasn't in the mountains. It wasn't in a runaway theory. It wasn't a rumor, a lead, or a suspicion. It had been underwater all along. The case of Jed Hall, once a tangle of possibilities, was finally revealing its final, heartbreaking answer. Before Jed Hall became a name tied to a river, he was simply a teenage boy living an ordinary life in Idaho. At 16 years old, Jed was like many teenagers, quiet at times, restless at others, navigating the complicated maze between childhood and adulthood. He had friends, routines, interests, and struggles that weren't unusual for someone his age. Nothing in his daily life suggested a catastrophe waiting to happen. But on the night he disappeared in January 2018, everything changed. Jed left his home in the early hours of the morning, taking the family's silver SUV with him. No one knows exactly what was going through his mind at that moment. There was no dramatic confrontation, no clear plan, just a sudden exit that would launch one of the most heartbreaking missing person cases Idaho had seen in years. When his family woke up and realized he was gone, panic spread quickly. Calls were made. The police were notified. The search started instantly. Because Jed wasn't an adult, he was a teenager, vulnerable, likely scared, and possibly in danger. Investigators traced his last signs of activity, checking surveillance footage, interviewing friends, and scanning every known route he might have taken. But the SUV was gone, and so was Jed. From the very beginning, the case was a maze of confusion. No sightings, no abandoned vehicle, no evidence of foul play, no electronic trail, no indication he intended to leave for long. Just a boy and an SUV that vanished without explanation. Search teams looked everywhere: land, highways, rural back roads, remote areas he might have driven through. But the Snake River, with its violent current and unforgiving depth, wasn't an immediate focus. From the surface, the water looked calm, beautiful even. There was nothing to suggest a vehicle beneath it. And that became the tragic turning point. If a car enters the Snake River, it doesn't float. It sinks, fast. The current drags it, flips it, buries it in silt. Within hours, it becomes invisible. Within weeks, it becomes part of the river. Within months, even trained divers struggle to locate it. And within years, it becomes a forgotten shadow in the dark. As time passed, rumors grew. People theorized everything, from Jed running away, to foul play, to a voluntary disappearance. None of it had proof. The search cooled. Resources dwindled. The case slowly shifted into the category no family ever wants to hear. Cold. A young boy gone without a trace. A family left in limbo, and a community with more questions than answers. But the truth wasn't complicated. It wasn't far away. It wasn't hidden behind a human mystery. It was hidden underwater. And no one had looked deeply enough until years later. From the moment Jed's SUV disappeared, the search became one of the most desperate efforts Idaho had seen in years. Police worked leads. Volunteers walked miles of riverbank. Helicopters scanned stretches of rural roadway. Every possible route Jed could have taken was checked, rechecked, and mapped. But with no physical evidence, no tire marks, no debris, no abandoned car, the search had nothing solid to stand on. And the Snake River, powerful and unpredictable, was barely considered. Investigators knew the river had fast currents, sharp bends, and layers of silt that could bury objects almost instantly. Sonar wasn't used as widely then, and diving blindly into pitch-black water with zero visibility was dangerous. Without clear evidence that the SUV had entered the river, no one wanted to risk sending divers into what was essentially a moving blackout. So the search stayed on land. For months, teams expanded the radius, looking anywhere a teenager might have driven. Trails, fields, remote back roads, empty parking lots. Flyers covered community boards. Tips came in, most of them leading nowhere. Some people were sure Jed had run away. Others were convinced foul play was involved. A few thought he'd left the state entirely. The theories multiplied. The evidence did not. After the first year, the case shifted from active to stagnant. The large search efforts stopped. Agencies moved to other ongoing cases. The file remained open, but without solid leads, there was no direction left to pursue. His family continued to push, continued to hope, continued to hold on to any possibility that Jed was still out there. But the river, silent, shifting, and deep, still had the truth. Still, nobody knew it. For 4 years, that stretch of the Snake River swallowed everything. Debris, sediment, currents strong enough to drag a full-sized vehicle into deeper pockets. Any trace of Jed's SUV stayed hidden under layers of mud and darkness. Even if someone had looked directly down from the surface, they'd see nothing but murky green. No metal, no reflections, no sign of a vehicle at all. By the time sonar technology advanced and professional underwater search teams returned to older cold cases, Jed's disappearance had faded from headlines. But not from the hearts of those who loved him. And that's why, years later, a fresh effort was made to search the one place that had never been fully ruled out. That decision changed everything. Because just a few minutes into the sonar scan, the river finally gave up its secret. A shape. Sharp. Defined. Buried. But undeniably, a vehicle. After 4 years of questions, rumors, and pain, the Snake River was about to speak. Investigators pressed deeper into the digital timeline, hoping the screen would reveal what the Snake River had kept hidden for years. Jed's online behavior in the hours before he left home continued to raise questions. He had searched for survival gear, wilderness shelters, and remote areas in Idaho. Some searches suggested independence and adventure. Others hinted at escape, but none conclusively explained why he walked out at 2:30 a.m. without saying a word to anyone. The last confirmed sighting of Jed's 2009 Honda Pilot came from a security camera at a local ATM. He withdrew a small amount of cash, nothing that suggested he was planning to run away forever. Then the SUV disappeared from the city grid. No additional traffic camera ever picked it up. No witness confidently reported seeing him drive past. It was as if the vehicle and its young driver slipped into a void. Police continued to question students from school, people who might have known Jed was struggling. Most described him as quiet, reserved, polite. A few said he seemed stressed in the weeks before he vanished. Others thought he was carrying burdens he never talked about. But there was never a single clear trigger. Just fragments of a teenager's inner life. None strong enough to paint the full picture. The search extended along every major road leading out of Idaho Falls. Officers mapped possible routes Jed could have taken toward the mountains, toward rural farmlands, toward the desert stretches east of Bonneville County. But one direction kept returning to the top of the list: the Snake River Corridor. Long, winding, unpredictable. A place where a single mistake could hide evidence for years. Several volunteers suggested that if Jed had lost control of his SUV at night, the river could have swallowed everything without leaving floating debris behind. Dive teams attempted early scans in the weeks after his disappearance, but the water was too cold, the current too violent, and the visibility almost non-existent. The river's underwater terrain changed constantly, piling silt, shifting rocks, and creating deep pockets. If the vehicle went in during winter runoff, it could have been pushed far from the entry point. Every attempt ended with the same result: nothing. As years passed, the case became one of Idaho's longest-running teenage disappearances. Rumors grew. Some believed Jed ran away to start a new life off the grid. Others claimed he might have been picked up by someone that night. A few insisted the river theory was too simple. Investigators kept an open mind, but the lack of physical evidence kept every path frustratingly incomplete. Then the breakthrough came unexpectedly. A volunteer sonar search organization returned to Idaho to assist with another missing person case. During their sweep of the Snake River, the team picked up an unmistakable shape deep below the surface. A large rectangular outline, unmoving, buried partially in silt. They marked the coordinates and sent divers down. Within minutes, the diver surfaced, breath heavy, voice strained but clear. He had found a license plate. The registration matched the missing Honda Pilot. Everything shifted instantly. Police set up a recovery perimeter, blocking off the riverbank and calling in specialized equipment. The SUV was submerged at a depth that made earlier searches impossible. The current had changed many times since 2018, covering parts of the vehicle and moving it enough to keep it hidden from less advanced sonar. When the crane finally lifted it from the water, the river released years of silence. Mud ran down the sides. Windows were shattered, and inside, remains confirmed to be those of Jed Hall were found. The mystery that haunted Idaho Falls for years was suddenly in front of them, real and undeniable. But even then, answers were still incomplete. The recovery confirmed where Jed ended up. It did not yet say why. Authorities examined the vehicle carefully. There were no signs of foul play. No damage that suggested another car had forced him off the road. The most probable scenario was a tragic accident. Jed may have misjudged a curve in the darkness. He may have been distracted or emotionally overwhelmed, or he may have chosen the river intentionally. The evidence could fit more than one possibility, but it did not speak definitively. Jed's family finally had a place to grieve, but the emotional weight of the discovery was almost unbearable. For them, the ending brought closure, but also new pain. Years of uncertainty were replaced by the reality of what had happened. The community mourned with them, remembering the teenager who vanished in the early hours of January 22, 2018, and the long search that followed. As investigators finalized their findings, they acknowledged the truth that many cold cases share. Sometimes the earth, the water, and the darkness can hide answers for years. And sometimes, when the truth comes back to the surface, it brings peace and heartbreak at the same time. Even after investigators closed the file, the questions surrounding Jed Hall's final hours lingered in the minds of everyone who followed the case. The recovery of the SUV answered the physical mystery, but the emotional uncertainty lived on. People wanted to understand what Jed was feeling, what thoughts guided his hands on the steering wheel, and why he drove into the night without confiding in a single soul. The truth is that some stories refuse to explain themselves fully. They leave behind quiet echoes instead of complete narratives. In the weeks following the discovery, specialists reviewed the digital evidence again, hoping that a second look with fresh context might reveal something previously missed. But the timeline remained the same. His searches were ambiguous, his messages normal, his plans, for the most part, intact. There was no manifesto, no final communication, no sign that he prepared for a long disappearance. If this had been a deliberate act, he left no clues behind. And if it had been an accident, there was nothing to point to it definitively either. The Snake River had kept its secret too well. The path his SUV took, the angle it entered the water, the speed he was driving, the conditions on the road, none of it could be reconstructed with certainty. What investigators could conclude was limited to a range of possibilities. Jed may have been overwhelmed. He may have been tired, distracted, or emotionally struggling. Or he may have simply taken a wrong turn in darkness thick enough to erase the boundary between road and river. The evidence allowed space for several truths, and no single explanation rose above the rest. For the Idaho Falls community, closure came with layers. On one layer, the pain of losing a teenager whose life held potential. On another, the relief of ending a search that stretched across seasons, years, and countless volunteer hours. And beneath those layers sat something quieter. Gratitude for the people who never stopped looking. The divers, the sonar teams, the volunteers who scoured the riverbanks, and the investigators who kept the case active long after most leads had dried up. Their persistence brought a family the one thing every family of a missing person hopes for: answers, even incomplete ones. When Jed's remains were returned to his family, a memorial service was held, not just as a goodbye, but as a way to reclaim the years he spent missing. People shared stories from school, small moments that captured who he was when he felt safe and normal. Teachers remembered a bright, curious mind. Friends recalled a quiet sense of humor. His family remembered his kindness, his loyalty, and the way he loved without always knowing how to express it. The service allowed the community to see Jed as someone more than a case file, more than a headline, more than a mystery locked beneath a river. Even now, the story of Jed Hall continues to resonate. It serves as a reminder of the importance of checking in on the people around us, especially the ones who seem to carry their burdens silently. And it underscores the reality that not all disappearances come with villains. Sometimes a river is the only antagonist. Sometimes tragedy happens in the dark, without violence, without warning, without a clear motive. For those who dedicate their lives to solving cold cases, Jed's discovery reinforced the value of new technology. Sonar improvements and volunteer organizations have changed the landscape of search and recovery work. Jed's case is one among many, where modern scanning tools uncovered answers the human eye could never find. As those tools advance, more families will find the closure Jed's family waited years to receive. As the story closes, one chapter remains open: a legacy of awareness, community support, and the understanding that every missing person deserves to be found. Jed's journey ended in the Snake River, but the impact of his story continues, quietly reminding us that the truth has weight, even when it arrives slowly. And if you've stayed with this story until the end, thank you. These cases matter because people like you care enough to listen. If you want more deep, detailed true crime investigations like this one, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling us which case you want us to explore next. Your engagement helps keep these stories alive, helps bring attention to long-forgotten files, and keeps this community growing. Until the next investigation, stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.